All right, let's jump into another deep dive. We're focusing on Southern California this time, using a whole bunch of articles from the Observer Group newspapers. And wow, there's a lot going on. We've got health updates, especially with the flu, and then some interesting economic trends that are impacting Black communities. Oh, and some pretty big political happenings at the state level, too. So get ready. It's going to be a fascinating deep dive.
You know what's really interesting is how all these stories, I mean, they seem kind of different on the surface, right? But they're actually all connected in a way. It paints this picture of what's going on in Southern California right now, like the challenges people are facing, but also the opportunities. Like, it's pretty fascinating.
Okay, so let's start with the one everyone's talking about, the flu. Seems like everyone's getting it. This article, it just lays out how bad it is right now. Flu cases, they're at a 4-year high in California. 26% of lab tests are positive. And it's not just the number of cases, it's also how severe it is. Flu-related deaths, you're up too.
Yeah, this isn't just like your typical flu season, it's something else. There's this doctor, Dr. Jerry P. Abraham, he's quoted in one of these articles, and he thinks that these rising temperatures in California, they could actually be contributing to these new flu strains, and they're way more aggressive. And if that's true, well, then we need to think about the bigger picture. What happens long term with climate change and how it's affecting our health? Are we really ready for this? Can our healthcare systems handle it? What about future flu seasons? Are they going to be even worse?
That is a pretty scary thought, to be honest. It's not just about, oh, did you get your flu shot? It's way bigger than that. But Dr. Abraham, he does still say those basic things are important, like wearing a mask, staying home if you're sick.
Right, of course, those individual actions, those are important, yeah. But I'm not sure they're going to be enough with all these bigger issues, the systemic ones. This flu season, it's a wake-up call. We need a better public health system, one that can adapt and respond to these new health threats.
Okay, so let's switch gears a bit and talk about economics. There's a big headline here about these big companies, corporations, actually scaling back on all that DEI stuff, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the NAACP and the black press, they're not having it. They're telling black consumers, look, use your power, your spending power. It's projected to be like almost $2 trillion by 2030. Support businesses that actually believe in DEI.
And it's interesting, they're calling it a buy-in, not a boycott. So it's not just about avoiding the bad companies, it's about actively choosing the good ones, the ones doing it right. They specifically mention companies like Delta, Apple, Ben & Jerry's.
Right, and then there's this whole Target fast thing. Basically, they're asking people to not spend any money at Target for 40 days during Lent. Why Target? Well, apparently after George Floyd was murdered, Target pledged $2 billion to black-owned businesses, but it seems like they haven't really followed through.
The Target situation, it makes you think, about how accountable are these big companies really? Are they serious about all this DBI stuff, or are they just saying it because it sounds good? And can consumers actually change things, really change things just by where they shop? It's a tricky question, it really is. A company like Target, they're definitely going to feel it if they lose millions of dollars, but real change, the kind that lasts, that's not just about spending habits.
You're right. It really makes you think about, what you buy and what you support. Okay, let's move on to politics. Governor Newsom, he's trying to speed up wildfire recovery. He's launched this huge debris removal operation, the fastest one ever, it says. Sounds great, right? But not everyone's happy about it.
Yeah, it's causing a lot of tension, especially because Newsom wants insurance companies to pay for some of it. He wants to use the California F-Air plan. It's that state-backed insurance program that covers fire damage when regular insurance won't. And he wants to use it to get some of the money back that the state spent on wildfires. A lot of people are criticizing this, especially Republicans. They say it'll just make homeowners insurance go up even more.
Ugh, it's a tough situation all around. Homeowners, they're already struggling with insurance costs. But the state's got to find a way to pay for all this wildfire recovery. It's not cheap.
It's a mess, yeah. And what's interesting is that it shows how climate change, the economy, and politics, they're all tangled up. It's not just about cleaning up debris. It's about finding ways to prevent these fires in the first place and making sure homeowners aren't the ones stuck with the bill.
I totally agree. And, it's not just wildfires. Climate change impacts so many things. This next article, it talks about the wage gap for black women in California. And get this, it says it'll take 100 years to close the gap at the rate we're going.
Wow, that's pretty disheartening. It shows that we have a long way to go when it comes to economic justice. We can celebrate things like Black homeownership going up, that's great, but we can't ignore these systemic barriers that are still holding Black women back.
Yeah, it's clear we need more than just small changes here and there. We need big solutions. We need to dismantle these inequalities and actually value the work that Black women do.
Absolutely. And those solutions need to address everything, like access to affordable childcare, good education, making sure salaries are transparent, getting rid of discrimination in hiring. It's about giving everyone a fair shot, a real chance to succeed.
Okay, let's talk about something a little more positive now. There's this really cool story about the Black Caucus and the Black Chamber of Commerce in Sacramento. They got together to celebrate Black-owned businesses. 16 entrepreneurs were honored. They're all doing amazing things in their communities.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Those success stories, they're so important, especially when you consider all the challenges that Black entrepreneurs face. These people, they're not just running businesses, they're creating jobs, they're helping the local economy. They're role models for anyone who wants to start their own business.
For sure. But then there's also this other part of the article that talks about the Caltrans Disadvantaged Business Enterprises Program. So they gave out almost $1 billion in contracts last year. But Black businesses, they only got about 50 million of that.
That's a problem. It shows that representation matters, even in these programs that are supposed to be about equity. Black businesses, they need the resources and the support to compete for these contracts.
Right? It makes you think, like, what needs to happen to close that gap? Do Black entrepreneurs know about these opportunities? Do they have the support to actually apply for them?
It's probably a combination of things. We need to make sure Black businesses are ready to compete. That's one side. And then on the other side, we need corporations and government agencies to actually seek out Black-owned businesses and support them.
Okay, last stop on our Southern California news journey. We're going down to Los Angeles for the 40th Annual Kingdom Day Parade.
Oh, the Kingdom Day Parade. It's more than just a parade, you know. It's a reminder of the fight for justice and equality, everything Dr. King stood for.
This year's theme was peace and unity, which is so fitting, especially because it was delayed because of the wildfires, But they still had it, and Ben Crump, the civil rights attorney, he was the Grand Marshal.
It's amazing to see how the community came together, even after all that, to celebrate Dr. King and everything he fought for.
Yeah, the article mentions all these powerful moments from the parade. The AIDS Healthcare Foundation, they had a float that said racism is a public health issue. And then they had a replica of the Rosa Parks bus. It's a powerful reminder of how far we've come, but also how much work there's still left to do.
The AHF float, that's a really strong message. Calling racism a public health crisis, it shows how racism literally impacts people's health. It makes you think about all those disparities we talked about earlier in healthcare and the economy.
It's all connected. And to really fix it, we need to look at the big picture, the whole system.
Exactly. And we need to remember that true equality isn't just about legal rights. It's about economic opportunity, health care, the right to live without discrimination and prejudice. The Kingdom Day Parade, it's a reminder of all that.
So that's it for part one of our deep dive into Southern California news. We've covered a lot already, from the flu and DEI to the economy and the Kingdom Day Parade. But before we move on, I want to hear from you. What stood out to you the most so far?
For me, it's that theme of interconnectedness. Everything's connected, you know? Climate change and public health, corporate decisions and local communities, the fight for economic and racial justice. We can't look at these things in isolation. We need to understand how they all fit together.
That's so true. And that's what makes these deep dives so interesting, I think. It's not just about giving information. It's about starting a conversation, getting people thinking, and hopefully helping people make those connections themselves. But we're not done yet. There's more to come. Stay with us as we continue our exploration of Southern California news in part two of our deep dive.
You know, it's funny how a local event like that parade, the Kingdom Day Parade, it can connect to these big national issues like corporate accountability and DEI.
Yeah, totally. It all ties together somehow. Speaking of corporations and DEI, this next article talks about the FCC. They're investigating Comcast's DEI initiatives. What's going on there?
Well, the FCC, it's led by this guy, Brendan Carr, and he's really looking into these DEI programs. He's saying they might actually be breaking the law, you know, equal employment laws. And this is a big deal because the FCC, they have a lot of power. They can control companies like Comcast, you know, companies that need licenses from the FCC.
So it's not just about Comcast, then. This could change how all companies deal with DEI.
Exactly. It could have a domino effect. You know, companies like Apple, Cisco, even Trader Joe's, they've been all about DEI, but now they might have to rethink things. This investigation, it's a warning sign, you know.
And it's happening at the same time that there's all this political pushback against DEI. The article mentions the new administration. They're saying DEI is discriminatory.
Oh, yeah, that definitely adds another layer to this whole thing. It's this ongoing battle, you know. Some people say DEI is crucial. We needed to fix past discrimination. And then others say it's just reverse discrimination.
It's complicated for sure. There are strong arguments on both sides. It'll be interesting to see what happens. Okay, for now, let's go back to those wildfires. We were talking about Newsom and insurance companies, right? And how he wants them to help pay for recovery. This article brings up something else, though. Fraudulent contractors. People trying to take advantage of homeowners who are just trying to rebuild.
Ugh, yeah, you always see that after these disasters. It's so sad. People are vulnerable. They're desperate to fix their homes. And these shady contractors, they swoop in and promise everything. But then they do a terrible job or just take the money and run.
It's awful that people would exploit others like that. So what can homeowners do to protect themselves?
Honestly, the best thing is to just be super careful. Make sure the contractor has a license, get quotes from different people, don't feel pressured to make a quick decision. And there's help out there, like local government agencies, nonprofits, they can give you advice and support.
That's good to know. It's important to remember you're not alone. Okay, I think we've covered a lot with these Southern California stories. What are your thoughts so far? What are you picking away from all of this?
One thing that keeps coming up for me is this idea of resilience. You see it everywhere. People rebuilding after fires, Black consumers using their economic power. People are facing challenges, but they're also fighting for a better future.
I see that too. It's hopeful in a way, even when things are tough. What about you? What's sticking with you?
For me, it's the struggle for equity, especially for Black communities. That's a theme throughout these articles. The wage gap for Black women, the lack of contracts for Black-owned businesses. It's clear that we need to change the system, fix these inequalities.
You're right. We have a lot of work to do. But these stories also show us what's possible, the power of collective action, how important it is to push for change. Whether it's through the choices we make every day or through bigger policy changes, we're not at the end yet, though. We have more to explore in these articles. Stick with us as we keep digging into these stories and see what other insights we can uncover in the final part of our deep dive. Wow, we've talked about a lot of heavy stuff, haven't we? I mean, the flu numbers, those DEI debates, the economy, and then all the incredible resilience we're seeing. It's a lot. But as I keep reading these articles, I'm seeing these connections, these themes popping up. What are you noticing?
Yeah, you're right. There are definitely some patterns here. One thing I keep thinking about is power. Who has it, who benefits from it, and who gets left out in the cold? Like, think about the economy. The wage gap for Black women, the fact that Black-owned businesses aren't getting those big contracts. Then there's politics, who's paying for wildfire recovery? And are those DEI commitments from corporations, are they real or just for show?
It's like you said earlier, everything's connected. It's not just about these individual events, it's the whole system, right?
Exactly. The system's a big part of it.
Which makes me wonder about individual choices versus collective action. Like, can we really make a difference with those individual choices? Like supporting Black-owned businesses or pushing for policy changes. Can we actually change the system that way?
It's a good question. I think individual actions are important, but they work best when we all do them together. Like that target fast, right? If one person skips target, it doesn't do much. But when thousands of people do it, well, that sends a message. And that can change how corporations act.
It's like a ripple effect.
Exactly. And it's the same with politics, community organizing, even just talking about these issues. When we join forces, we can shift the narrative. We can challenge the status quo.
And that reminds me of the Kingdom Day Parade. It's all about collective action, pushing for justice and equality.
Right? That parade, it reminds us that change doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. It takes a lot of people working together. And even when we celebrate progress, we have to remember the fight's not over.
Yeah, that AHF float, the one about racism being a public health crisis, it's like a wake-up call, right? Systemic racism, it affects people's lives in so many ways.
It does, and it shows that true equality, it's about more than just laws on paper. It's about equal access to opportunities, resources, support systems. Everyone deserves that, no matter their race, gender, or how much money they have.
And to get there, we need to go beyond those individual solutions, right? We need to attack the root causes, dismantle those discriminatory systems.
We need to create a society where everyone can thrive.
So, looking back at these Southern California stories, it's a mixed bag, isn't it? There are definitely challenges with disasters, the economy, politics, but there's also this amazing resilience, this drive to create a better future.
That's what I see too. It's a combination of difficulties and hope.
It makes me feel cautiously optimistic, The problems are serious, but there's also so much potential for change.
And we all have a part to play in making that change happen.
Exactly. Whether it's supporting Black-owned businesses, pushing for policies that are fair,
or just having these conversations, every little bit helps.
I love that. It's a great way to put it. So thank you for joining us on the deep dive into Southern California. We hope you learned something, maybe had your mind blown a little, and most importantly, we hope it inspired you to keep digging, keep asking questions. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and keep diving deep.